Hi, this is Juliet Depagnier, and I am presenting on Key 4, and this is future tense. Today's presentation will discuss what is future tense and what it looks like and when we use it. We will also look at language interference, ways we can teach the future tense. We will also review a study on ELL grammar and review some exercises that you can use for further future tense practice. So, what is future tense? When I had originally thought about my presentation for future tense, I immediately thought, all my activities will be based on using will and any verbs that students provide. Then I read the section in the handbook about future tense, and it told me that this is rarely used. The most common forms for future tense is be going to, and present progressive tense. Examples are, we are going to travel, we are traveling. Two other tenses that are rarely used, along with the will plus verb, is future perfect tense and future perfect progressive tense. Now, as we've learned in previous presentations, there's an order for students to learn these tenses. And at this point, the students would have learned about present tense, they would have learned about the past tense, and now this would be the appropriate time to learn about the future tense. There are 6 future tense verbs, but as I mentioned in the previous slide, the more commonly used forms are the be going to and present progressive. As you can see at the top row, be going to is something that happens in the future and it has been already planned. And the example given is, we are going to fly to New York tomorrow. Also, if you look further down at the present progressive, this is simply just an event that's in the future. And the example they give is, we are flying to New York tomorrow. Now, let's take a look at the negative forms for this future tense. As we've discussed in previous presentations, the simple present is tricky for our ELL learners, and it has an auxiliary verb that is negated by adding not. An example of this is, the man does not like his food. Now we're going to talk about all the easy ways to negate, and that would be the 2 most common ways or most common tenses, and that's be going to and the present progressive. It's simply negating that auxiliary be, and we use am not, is not, and are not. An example of this would be, the bus driver is not going to drive fast today. We also find that the simple future, future progressive, future perfect, and future perfect progressive are easy to use or easy to negate by negating will, and you would use it will not. Kathy will not attend the meeting tomorrow. So what does native language interference look like? Many of us have encountered this first example, and that's with the use of no before the verb. I, on many occasions, have a student that would come to me and say, me no like cookies, or I no go to school. Other ways, and the more general ways of native language interference occurring, would be inverting the subject and auxiliary verb, and also incorrectly forming questions. And an example of that would be, how many people do you will invite to the meeting? I was interested in looking into the corpus lingua and using the COCA to give me further information on this future tense. And I used that phrase, is going to. And I wanted to see what verb was frequently used with is going to. And if you just look further down from is and be, is the verb think. And this was the most frequently used. And then below that is have. And then quite a drop down from that is do. I did find the section on the teaching of the future tense. This was a valuable tool. I think many of us have used this, or we've looked at using this in our classrooms. And I would think this would be appropriate because at this point the students have already learned about the present tense, the past tense, and now they're working on the future tense. So it would be a great review for them. And what I've done is I have 3 of columns with the present, the past, and the future. And I've already given the first verb, and I use the verb work. And I've shown the students, so in the past, I worked, the present, I work, and the future, I am going to work. Now, students, if you can give me verbs, and let's plug it into the present, the past, and the future. Then I was thinking of another way that we could use the future sentences that the students provided, and we could use this by plugging it into a Wordle. I think a Wordle would be a great tool to emphasize the different words that go along with the tense. And then a third way that I thought that students could use these future tense sentences is by taking them and mixing them up and then putting them back in order again. And I thought this would be a great activity to work with partners or work independently. And once again, they would get that practice of looking for the tense, making sure it's in the right order. And then I thought the last activity would be good another overall review was having these sentence strips from each of the different categories printed out on paper and then distributed to the different members of the class, who could then come up and sort them to the appropriate column. As in the previous slide, the different teaching techniques that I thought would be important was definitely using a board to put up the information so the students could then see a pattern. Also, modeling. The teacher would be the first one to assist, maybe show them this is how we work through this, take the example, and then proceed with it. So a bit of assistance as well. I came across when I was looking into this future tense, an interesting study for young learners in elementary school. And this was in Turkey, conducted in 2009. These two researchers wanted to see how grammar and vocabulary could be enhanced with the use of cartoons in the classroom. And specifically, this is for an English language learning class. And what they did was there was two groups of learners. There's the control group, which had a conventional classroom setting. But then the experimental group was given daily exposure to cartoons. And this daily exposure to cartoons would help and assist the students with grammar and with vocabulary, and reinforce any of the teachings that the students were given on a daily basis. And what the study found was that at the end of this, the two groups were varied. The control group tested much lower than the experimental group. The group that had that daily cartoon, that was able to have this opportunity to listen and use authentic language, and meaningful. It was meaningful in that these cartoons, these students, the young students, understood them and they could relate to them. So I think this is a great tool and a great reminder to teachers that, to keep this lively learning environment, and this is a beneficial tool, especially in our 21st century classrooms. For those that need extra practice for our future tense, or just to hone in on your future tense, there's many different activities in our workbook. And there's up to, I think, 24 activities that you can practice. And here are my references. Please feel free to comment, send me comments, any questions or suggestions for this presentation. I thank you so much for listening.